Alright guys, so today I have something pretty incredible just for you. Today I've brought you Stuart Kagan. If you know me, you know this channel, you know that this is not a podcast channel, but when I have a guest, it's a beast. And Stuart is clearly a beast. Stuart started his career in the back of a small scrapyard in his home country, South Africa. Then, over the following 15 years, he climbed up the ladder, took the position of head of trading, and finally ending up in the executive director chair. He was in charge of the largest trading and recycling company in Southern Africa, with more than 80 facilities across the continent. Then, after relocating from South Africa to New Zealand with his family, he started from scratch a new company that is scaled to 60 million in revenue in less than 5 years. As I said, Stu is a beast, so pay attention to the following conversation. You will learn a lot. All right, Stu, so let's directly jump in. Can you talk about a deal that went very, very wrong?
I absolutely can. During COVID, with all the supply chain issues that we had, we were struggling to get containers out of New Zealand. So what happened was I had 12,000 square meters as a yard, which was a nice size, and we had huge support from the local suppliers. So we were getting a lot of metal in, but I couldn't get any of it out. And we always went to containers. We weren't yet big enough for bulk vessels, something that I had done in my previous role in South Africa. But we were forced, all of a sudden we were running out of space and we couldn't get containers. So what I did was I was able to speak to a local shipping line and kind of hitch a ride to South Korea on a forestry vessel, taking logs.
Okay. So that was like a trade that was going on from the New Zealand to South Korea.
South Korea.
And
exactly
then you
right.
were like, look, do you have space for my metals on you? Okay.
It was like an Uber vessel.
Yeah.
It was like, have you got space for me? I just want 1 or 2 hatches, and they made space for me. So what happened was, all of a sudden we went from having no space in the yard to now having a sale that was coming up in 3 weeks' time, and I needed to carry on buying against. I ended up renting another yard for a short period down the road, and then when the ship came, it all went swimmingly well. That we packed it really on time. Everything went really well. But because this was the first time that I was going bulk into South Korea, previously in South Africa, we did 2 to 3 bulk vessels of 30,000 tons each per month. And that was always going into the likes of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, because of the routes. It made more sense from South Africa. But from New Zealand, obviously this ship was going to South Korea. Although I had sold a lot of copper there previously, I'd never sold this sort of volume of HMS steel.
But there is a lot of buyers in right?
There are a lot, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
There's really good ones.
Yeah.
I ended up selling to the second or maybe the third biggest bulk buyer or steel buyer in Korea. But I was forced to go to that region, so I had to open up a new market very, very quickly, right? And that's always a risk, and we can delve into what happens when you're selling to a new buyer. But I was forced to sell them because that's where the ship was going. So I made this arrangement, and the problem was that payment was an LC, but they withheld 5% of the total value for payment after it had been offloaded at the port.
Okay. So but it's quite common actually. I don't know in the scrap, but in metals and minerals, if you sell concentrate or in a lot of commodities, they withheld the value. Usually, there is a lot of industries where you never get this value back. So you can always like it's you need to have it in factored in your loss. But that's okay. So basically, you sell with a confirmed LC 95% of the value down the line, and then the 5% is after what? After inspection or whatever.
After inspection, okay. Exactly right. Now that would be fine. And I've had incredible relationships with a lot of Korean buyers for 25 years, never had an issue, so I felt very comfortable. The problem that we had was not my fault, it wasn't my mistake, but the markets crashed. And I'm talking about, I think we sold at the time, it was about $575 per ton. This is a few years ago. And I think it dropped to about 420. So it was a massive, massive drop in price. And this is just while the ship was on the water. I can tell you about my learnings afterwards. But what happened was it arrived on the other side, and my surveyor, which I had paid for, was obviously on that side to check that the quality was okay, was completely snubbed by their surveyor. So he was obviously told to not communicate with my surveyor. And they came up with an impurity, something that I've never seen in my entire life. The usual amount is something around 0.5, maybe 0.49, around there for impurities in a bulk vessel. And I can't remember the exact amount, but there was something like 2.8% of the vessel they said was dirt. Now, I tried to explain to them in cubic meterage how much space they would have taken up, and that my yard wasn't even big enough to hold that amount of dirt. Unfortunately, because they didn't communicate with my surveyor and they held the funds, there was absolutely nothing I could do. So the toughest trade, the hardest decision, I was forced into that. I did it at the time. I must tell you, we celebrated when that ship left. We were cracking champagne. It was an amazing sale. The market came off. We were celebrating. We got the sale at the perfect time. What I should have known in my 25 years of trading, I should have known that there is a risk that when it gets on the other side, there is going to be a claim. I should have gotten an aeroplane. Granted, it was difficult because it was COVID, but it's no excuse. I could have made a plan. I should have got on a plane and been there when they offloaded it to have those arguments myself in person.
Yes, exactly. So, Stu, this is good that you said that, because I was going to say, dude, you were not there at the unloading with a new... okay, so 2 questions that I have. Could you just withhold the... do you have the finance to just keep the metals and wait? Or you had to sell because for whatever reason? Because this is the first
So they
question.
took ownership. So on
No,
payment,
I'm thinking, did you need to sell?
I didn't have space in my yard.
Okay,
So there was no space in my yard. So either I had to close my doors until I could get containers again, or keep it rolling, keep my customers happy, because I had some incredible customers that I needed to keep servicing. So I was forced, I needed to sell. Look, don't get me wrong, the sale was perfectly timed. Everything, I had hedged everything was perfect. Except for that 5% where I got absolutely nailed.
This is tough, man. But what a great story, because it's a learning for everyone. Because also when you get used to like doing deals and so on, you don't do the basic. And the basic is with a new supplier or with a new buyers. If there is like any type of inspection at unloading, you need to go there, or someone from your company needs to go there. But just and also it shows that you are committed and so on. So it's but man, it's painful. It's painful.
I totally agree with you. I should have. I think at the time, because it was in the middle of COVID,
sure.
I felt it was difficult, but it's not a good enough excuse, because I could have made arrangements. I actually ended up getting on a plane 2 weeks later
but it's too late.
to Korea, and I sat there for 1 week. I sat there for a week, and they wouldn't meet with me. I got there on the Monday. They ended up meeting with me on Friday at 4 p.m. I had an open ticket waiting for the meeting. They met with me on Friday at 4 p.m. and they just said, that's what the surveyor says. Our contract says, if that's what our surveyor says, that's what you're getting paid for. Absolutely nothing I could do.
Yeah, but and also there's one thing, like you need to be very careful with Koreans. This is not the first time that I hear story like this in Korea, and it's quite funny because people think, in Korea they look like Japanese. Yeah, but no, this is completely different. I've never seen a claim like that in Japan that was not unsubstantiated. But in Korea, it happened quite often. But man, okay,
I've sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of copper into Korea over 20 years.
Yeah, but
in fact, that's probably more than that. And I've never had an issue like that.
But
so
it's not
I
the
thought
same.
I was in good hands.
It's not the same, dude. So it's when you are also a big company, this is not the same that a small supplier than a big one. So
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
When I was selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of copper, we were the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. So you didn't want to mess us around necessarily, because if we took our copper elsewhere, it actually had an impact on that company, on the buyer. Whereas for me, it was the first time doing business with them. They weren't sure that I was going to carry on going bulk or even go back to them again. It didn't affect them if they went and, I don't want to say robbed me, but if they took advantage of me.
No, they robbed you. But okay, so let's go back. So now let's go back to the very beginning of your career. So how come did you? So you are from South Africa. Now you live in New Zealand. So the first question would be, how did you end up in a scrapyard in South Africa?
So Damon, it's a metal recycling yard, we like to call them, right? So we're cleaning up our act. So we're not scrap anymore. But so I landed in a metal recycling yard. I was 18 years old, and I just finished school, and I'd moved cities with my stepfather and my mother. because my stepfather had got a job as an accountant for a small scrap metal company in South Africa. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of money. So in South Africa, there's no student loans and things like that. So you had to go and work. So my stepdad said to me, okay, well, you got a job in the company as well, start cutting steel. And I became a laborer. Didn't have a clue where it was going to end up. I just had to work to earn a living, right? And I was still living at home and going to work every single day. But what happened was, in that same year, there was an amalgamation of the 12 largest metal recycling companies in the region. And they all came together to create a company called the Reclamation Group. And at that time, obviously, as you can imagine, with a large merger like that, there's a lot of movement between managers and staff and divisions. So, all of a sudden we had 85 yards through sub-Saharan Africa with a new head office, a new management team, etc. And I was this young 18, 19-year-old who wasn't seen because we had over 4,000 staff. But I'm the kind of guy that if the guy for the weighbridge doesn't pitch up, they say, oh, who knows how to use the weighbridge? I put my hand up and I learn it as I'm going, right? All of a sudden I'm sorting non-ferrous and learning the different grades. And now I'm dealing with customers and I love people. So I was then in the front scale dealing with them and constantly moving. And after 3 or 4 years, I guess I probably got noticed and started moving into more junior manager roles, BDM, so business development manager, so customer facing, those sort of roles. Then I ran a large division. I ended up moving through that company where I became an executive director. After about 15 years, I was just in my early 30s, an executive director, one of 5 executive directors in the company. And I was responsible for the profitability of the metal recycling company, which was obviously that core part of the business. And that's 4,000 odd people. And underneath, was also the trading, operations and strategy for that business. And the trading was the core part, because on my way through, I ran the trading division for about 5 years, where we had a team of traders. I'd come through that as well. So, and that was probably where my passion was most.
So that's quite impressive. So basically, in 15 years, you end up from the yard to the big, nice, shiny office. So I don't know where is the office, but
probably wasn't super comfortable in those days in that shiny office. I was out mostly in the yards, but and seeing the stock and checking inventory. But I'll move my way through into that position. And became a shareholder, which I still am actually a shareholder of that company.
Oh, I mean, it's nice. So it's quite impressive. So now, can you explain to the audience what is exactly the business of a metal recycling company? Because you said customers several times, but for me the customers are buyers. But no, you said customers for the guy that sell you metal.
Yeah.
So can you just explain the business model in just how does it work and so on?
Sure. So I think one thing I'm going to start with is there's a saying in our industry, which is the man with the metal is king. So the man with the metal is the customer, right? So for us in the metal recycling yard, there are many metal recyclers usually in an area, and we all want to get the metal, right? The more metal we make, the more profit we can make, the more equipment we can buy, the more competitive we can be. So what happens is, your customers are the people selling to you. So they could be people like tradies, right? It can be a plumber who's cutting off the copper piping or taking off the brass taps or anything like that, any of the redundant equipment, and they're actually coming and bringing it and delivering it to you and getting paid either cash or to their account. They're getting paid for the material. It's also large demolition companies that are demolishing buildings or bridges, whatever it might be. There's a huge amount of infrastructure that we will then take. What we then do is, so interestingly enough, we then become the customer. So the big melters around the world need recycled material for many reasons. Number one is the reduction in carbon emissions is incredible if you compare recycled metal versus ore. Right, so there's a huge drive to buy more recycled material. So we become the man with the metal is king. So now we own it. So now we're the customer for all the different buyers around the world. But what our role is as a metal recycler is to process it into a way that the melter can melt it efficiently to make new material, to make new products. Right?
Okay. So basically, your role is to take the scrap and clean it, process it slightly, I guess, so it's easy for the smelter to use it. So if you can
think about it's cleaning and densification. So if you can think about a glass of ice when you're melting, that's kind of like a bucket of a furnace. The more dense the ice, the more water you're going to get out. If I just put one block of ice across the top of a glass and I melt it, I'm going to get a little bit of ice. It's all got to fit inside that glass, and it's got to be dense so that you get as much liquid per melt as possible.
Okay, cool. It's make a lot of sense. So it's basically, it's not really light processing because there's a lot of processing then. You need
huge amount. Huge amount of infrastructure and capital goes into metal recycling yards around the world.
Sure. And it's funny because I have this like small company in the DRC where we buy scrap there, and so we were looking to. I met a bunch of scrap yard in South Africa, and I could tell like the managers there, they love their machine. They're like, yeah, I'm going to buy this new machine. This machine do this. This machine do that. I'm like, wow, what is what? It seems like all the guys, they are completely in love with their machine. So this is so funny.
Without the machines, it's extremely difficult for us to process the material. So you kind of go from having a small baler which can densify things like aluminium window frames, maybe aluminium cans, products like that, even copper, etc., and maybe some roof sheeting. But then you start to move up to these big shears which will then cut your material for you, and they can even cut things like large I-beams. But then you get to multi-million-dollar projects, which is like a shredding plant. Now your shredding plant takes whole cars and shreds them into pieces of steel the size of your fist.
Yeah, so this
Any
is the
waste
one,
gets separated.
This is the one that we see. This is the one that we see in the movies, like where the
James
guy.
Bond.
Yeah, exactly. He's inside the.
That's exactly it. There's an incredible docuseries made by my good friend John Sacco in the United States called Repurposed. Now, write that down. Repurposed. Find it on YouTube. Have a watch of it. It will blow your mind. It's on YouTube.
I will put it in the link below this video.
Yeah, please do. It will absolutely blow your mind. You will see an industry that you didn't know exist, right? And you will see the incredible things that it's doing. I promise you now, watch the first 4 episodes of season 2, which has just come out last week. Blow your mind, Damien. I can promise you.
I'll do it. But I've already loved I was already in love with recycling way back because I read a book. I don't know. You probably know the book. It's Starting from Scrap by a gentleman that I'm missing the name right now. But I read that like when I was a kid. I was like, okay, so I should do the same. And this is why I started to trade plastic recycling. Plastic. It was HDPH. Oh, I don't remember the
high density polyethylene.
Yes. So, but this is because I read that book. So
there's another great book called Cold Steel. Cold Steel is the book about Lakshmi Mittal and how he came from working in a foundry to running the largest steel mill in the world. Very, very good book, worth a read if you got some time.
I will add all the book below this video, and I will buy this one.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Excellent.
Okay, cool. So Stu, you are now at the head of this big recycling company, and one day you decide to move to New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
This is how it happened, or?
It feels like that's how it happened. This was about just over 7 years ago now. I'm married to a management consultant. So she used to work at Deloitte. So everything she does is researched. There's lots of spreadsheets in our house. Everything is planned. I'm more of a gut guy, and I kind of just decide things on the fly. So what happened was we had our first child. He's turning 9. So, nearly 9 years ago. And we had to make a decision whether we wanted to stay in South Africa or whether we wanted to leave. And that's kind of based on what we wanted for our kids' future. Yes, I had an incredible role in an amazing company with a huge future opportunity. The lifestyle that we had is absolutely second to none. But at the same time, you've got an armed guard outside your house. You've got electric fences. You've got to be careful when you're driving home at night, all these sort of things. So we made a decision to immigrate. We made a decision to leave South Africa. At the time, I had a few opportunities to go different places around the world. My brother, interestingly enough, lives in Melbourne, Australia. I had some interest in certain companies, in large metal recycling companies in the United States. My wife's got family in Canada, family in London, everywhere except for New Zealand. It was the only place that we hadn't visited and didn't know anybody. But for whatever reason, my wife was running her spreadsheet, and every single thing that she wanted kept landing on New Zealand. We're talking about, lifestyle, opportunity for family, living by the ocean, all these sort of things that was kind of a dream when you're living in South Africa, to have that sort of environment and to be surrounded by that. And she turned to me one night and said, look, Stu, everything is landing on New Zealand. I think that's what we're doing. And my only answer, this was my whole decision, was, I love rugby. Let's go. That was my calculation. That's how I worked out where I wanted to go. And she had been doing this for weeks. So we literally decided that night we were moving to New Zealand. We didn't have any work or anything. My wife went and got a job while we were based in South Africa. She got a job in New Zealand to help us get a visa at the local university. And we packed up and we moved. And we didn't know anybody, and we started again.
So that's the part that I want to also to hear. So you started again. So obviously you did what you knew how to do, building a metal recycling company. So you're starting from scratch.
Yes.
And build up another company.
So I actually spent 1 year, exactly 1 year, working for the largest metal recycling company in the world called Sims. I worked for them in New Zealand for 1 year. Their general manager at the time in New Zealand, they got really sick. He was a fantastic guy. But unfortunately he was sick. So I came in as kind of like a reserve that weren't sure. I think he was having his third or fourth cancer operation at the time. So they weren't sure if he was going to come back. They weren't sure how it was going to go. So I came in very quickly and abruptly out of nowhere. They asked me to join the company, and I joined them. He came back, which was fantastic because, as I mentioned, he's a great guy. But I then sat with nothing really to do. I mean, I'd run a company with 4,000 people, and now had, I was kind of the reserve in a company with a couple of hundred people. And so there wasn't that opportunity, and we wanted to stay in New Zealand. It was talks of maybe we go to Australia with them, but we wanted to stay. So I looked for an opportunity, and I thought we could just do this ourselves, start from scratch. And what I did was I bought a tiny little, what we call in the industry, a bucket shop. So a tiny little hole in the wall where you might see it, every little town might have one, where the guys will go in their vans and they'll go and offload a little bit of scrap metal and they get paid. So I bought that for really a little bit of money. It was owned by a married couple, and they were retiring and they wanted out, but it was dead quiet. And it was just me, because I had previously worked in the yard and done all the customer facing things. I could go from, you said I landed up in the office, but I could go very quickly back down to offloading vehicles and dealing with customers all that and doing the grading. So all the experience that I had was worth so much to me, because I was able to go in and start offloading. So we built that company from scratch. We ended up with 4 yards at a stage, and we grew it to the second largest scrap metal company in Auckland.
So one thing that a lot of people that deal with commodities, which is the case with scrap metal, is like you need finance, because to buy from your customer, and then when you resell, there's like a gap that you need to get finance one way. So how did you do that? Did you self-finance, or did you went to the bank? So how did it work when you start from really a small wasteland, or I don't know.
So the one thing was capital to buy the little company. That was okay, but to start to buy the equipment was where it became a little bit trickier. So they say friends, fools, and family. So I brought in a couple of them. And they invested some money in the company for equity. We didn't bring on any debt in that way. And then the tricky part came that now we had some equipment, and now we were growing, but we were still selling to the local bigger exporters. And I knew my main opportunity was my relationships, because having run the trading office in the company in South Africa, I had these incredible relationships with the biggest buyers in the world and the best buyers in the world. So for me to actually take advantage of the opportunity was to export. But in order to do that, you need
money.
Trade finance, you need capital. You can't just go and compete with the biggest in the world unless you have it. So we were able to build a relationship with a bank, and they gave us trade finance. And the way that the finance worked was, it was actually backed by stock on the floor, not invoice factory.
So it was
I
asset-based
don't know if
lending,
you want to explain
or stock-based. I don't know how you call it.
Stock-based lending.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And which isn't very common in our industry at all, because it's not. We're not dealing in widgets, right? So it's an unknown. Steel. It's a pile. How do you do your inventory, and how do you check your inventory? interesting part, Damon, that you don't know is that actually went really badly. And if we're going to teach anybody anything, is be very careful when you do a deal with a bank.
Yeah.
Because we did this deal with the bank and they actually didn't understand what they had offered us. So they had given us this exactly what we spoke about, stock back. And then just before COVID, I think they had a bit of a risk issue. They were worried about what was going on for anybody exporting that side of the world. And they pulled the finance from us immediately, because they said that that wasn't exactly how they did it. They only did invoice factoring or invoice finance. They didn't do stock on the floor, put us under a massive amount of pressure, actually put us into some financial struggles at the time, which we came out of nicely. But at the time, that was a very, very scary situation to be in.
But yeah, so this is quite common. So this is, so I think for the audience, it's quite interesting to see that the bank, they don't know shit about what they are doing. And this is, but that's true. Okay, if you speak with the
I was trying to be more politically correct.
But the thing is, it's true for the local bank. Usually, if you are a local company, then you will go to your local bank because they are the one that is willing to take a shot on you. So props to them. But when you talk about trade finance, about stock financing, asset-based financing, or all that type of quite sophisticated finance, usually it's not. It's very hard to get to those type of financing as a small company because the guy that you're speaking with, they just don't know it. So they just don't know it. So the fact that you could make it happen is quite impressive. So small company, usually they go to find a small trade finance fund that will do that kind of facility, but it's extremely expensive. But if you've got to do this, then you've got to do what you've got to do. So this is why, usually people that do it, I mean, they are in the big cities, in the hub where there is people of trade finance that really understand what it means. But to have access to those guys, the business must be quite sensible, otherwise they won't take you as a client. So this is very difficult to breach if you start really from scratch to a level where you can speak with people that completely understand what you want. And but that's I guess that was a quite difficult moment at the time, but that's a good story. So yeah, the bank offers you stuff that they don't know.
We had to refinance ourselves out of the position, because when they ask you for your money back immediately and it's sitting on stock on the floor, and you're trying to say, well, what are we meant to do? We refinanced ourselves, which we were quite lucky to do because it could have easily just put us on our ass. So we were quite lucky.
Okay, so then you did that, and then you start exporting with your previous relationship. So, and how does it work? Because again, when you export, do you sell FOB or do you need to sell CIF? So how it's a mix. Yeah, it just for a small company, it's difficult to finance like 45 days on the sea if you need
Absolutely. To. Oh, and if you're in New Zealand, it's a lot further than that.
Yeah, you're right.
Try to get to India from New Zealand. You want the best aluminium prices, and you head to India, and you're waiting for 60 days or so. So, everybody is different. Everybody's appetite, everybody's cash flow is different. So it's difficult for me to say what is the best. I can tell you what the best was for me. Yeah. I had got the trade finance we needed, and I had got an interest rate that I really liked. My buyers that were the best in the world paid. I would have to sell CIF, and they paid for the material when it landed at their port. I kept control of the bill of lading, which is important. We can talk about risk in that. So I had control, but payment only was 5 days before arriving at their port or whatever it was, or 7 days. So there was a long period that had to be financed. That's why the trade finance was so important to me. It's very easy to sell FOB, but it's kind of a continuum, right? You can sell to your local metal recycler, somebody else locally who's exporting. Then the next step is to sell to a trader who's going to sell, he's going to buy from your FOB, and he's going to pay you as soon as you pack the container, right? That takes a little bit more finance than when you're just running trucks all day, every day. And then the next one is to all of a sudden wait for payment to land at the destination. Now, that's where the trader is selling to. But it's about whether you have the cash flow. But then it's not even just cash flow, because now if you want to sell CIF, you also have to handle the freight. Now you have to have a little bit more sophistication, maybe hire a shipping administrator, those sort of things. But luckily for me, I had that experience from the company I was in before. I landed in this huge company, and I was lucky that that's what I had around me. So when I was here, I knew what I needed. I needed a really good shipping person. I needed the trade finance ability, and then I could go and get to the end users and the people that I wanted to get the best price, which is exactly what gave me the edge and the ability to take on the biggest in the world that were just around the corner from me.
So that's okay. So then you sell SIF, but then when you sell SIF, you also take the risk of default. I mean, the thing that happened to in South Korea, or and the new risk that you need to take. Obviously, you knew the guys. I mean, you knew the buyers. So you said like, yeah, those are the best buyers. We can sell to India, to Pakistan, and we know we are going to get paid. So, but did you use like any type of letter of credit to confirm letter of credit to make sure that we are going to get paid, or insurance on your buyer, or no? You knew them; they are big companies, and
we used letter of credit. Certain companies insist on letter of credit. Even once I've been dealing with them for a long time, they still use LCs. So if the buyer insisted on it, then I knew them for a long time, we would. If it was any new buyer, we'd be using an LC anyway. Otherwise, generally, it's just cash against documents and through a bank, and then you feel that there's a bit of security there. Yep, there is some risk, but if you're going through a bank, you should be secure enough that the docs are issued once you got paid.
But still, it's okay.
When you've dealt with them for 20 years.
This is why.
Documents through a bank and you've had no issues. I think new business, I'd recommend going LCs for 100%.
Yes, for sure.
Full payment up front before it gets on the ship.
And then how do you handle with? There's another question, because how long does it take when you've got, I don't know, like a guy that comes with a truck and offload copper or whatever, and then for that copper to be paid by your customer? How long?
It depends on the commodity, but on average, it's going to be around 45 to 60 days.
Okay, so this is quite
total.
Okay, so
total turnaround time.
Yes, so this is quite a long time, actually, 60 days. So, and I guess if this is a small commodity, then you need to wait to get at least one container so you can ship it. So it could take even more time. So
that's where it starts to get trickier, right? When you've got slower moving material, and it takes you a long time to get a container. Not only is it a cash flow drag, but also it now becomes a risk on pricing.
Exactly. So that was going to be my question. So how do you hedge? Because when you are in a big company, no problem. You have hedging position, you have a hedge book. So I think I understand
easy.
how it works.
So easy.
But how do you do when you have like very small, tiny pieces of, I don't know, rhodium, or I don't know which metals, but
not rhodium. We're not catalytic converters, although I did do catalytic converters, which is rhodium, platinum, and palladium. But we're talking more about the aluminiums and the coppers and the brass, etc., etc. When you've got a slow-moving commodity, it becomes trickier. When you've got something you're buying a lot of, so like your heavy melting steel, lots of steel, you can do contracts once a week, and it just keeps on flowing, right? When you have a product like, let's just say for a smaller company that might be struggling to do honey, which is your brass taps, etc., might be struggling to get 25 tons, which is a full container, but that might take them 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
If it's taking you that long, you can't take a contract now, which you're only packing in 2 or 3 months' time. No one's going to buy it from you in that way, unless you then hedging the commodity. But let's not go there. That's a whole other world, the hedging against enemy. So you have to, first and foremost, you have to know everything that's going on in your company. You have to be all over your inventory. So you know exactly what your tonnage is. So you need a proper ERP system with a dashboard management process or program that you know what's going on, right? And you need to be in your yard, which was what I enjoyed doing. But to answer the question, everybody's different. What I used to do with slow moving material is wait till I had a half a box and then buy the other half. So now I know that if the material moves, I can average it out with my next purchases of the second half. But everything else that I bought, anything that I bought in a month, if I bought a full container on average in a month, I sold it in the beginning of the month and I bought against it. Sometimes the market goes the one way, other times it goes the other way. But what always happens is you always have your margin locked in.
Yeah, because I think if you wanna maybe a hedge fund and start to trade with your metals, I think to me it's a good way to not have a business in a couple of years. But that
exactly. There's one other trick. You can actually find a buyer for your slow material. You can find a buyer that will sell, that you can sell to based on a percentage. Problem is they take a bigger margin based on a percentage, and you can hedge every time you buy 5 tons. So I buy 5 tons of brass.
5 ton is a minimum.
Say I lock it in now. Usually, it depends. They're all different. But if I said 5 tons, I want to lock in 5 tons. He then goes and hedges it in the background. Problem is when they're offering you that service, you're talking to a trader, and they usually take a bigger margin.
Yeah, of course. And the traders going to be, because as a trader, I will definitely prepare. If I know that I can get a better margin, so I can prepare.
100%.
Then you
and you know that there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah, 2 months, 3 months to accumulate, no problem. And then I sell it at the end. So this is what I would do. But Okay. So I mean, so this is, and I like this actually the scrap business because it's quite operationally intensive. So I guess it's very difficult to run a quite lean and mean scrapyard as you did. But how do you manage when you have like 20 guys on the scrapyard, and they need to do their job quite well? Otherwise, I guess product can be mixed. I mean, there could be like a lot of injuries issue. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go wrong in those in those facilities. So, at what time do you think that you need to have like my question is, when is the breaking point where there's like too many people on the yard, and then now you need team, sub team, and so on, and you as the owner, you cannot be the guy kicking the ass of the other employees. So, when do you think you need a manager? So,
it's I think it comes with experience. I think there's a reason why you can't just, not you in particular, but generally people can't buy a metal recycling company and walk in there and go run it, because it's very different to anything else. And you can't go to university and study about it, right? So it's a feeling that you get. It's an understanding for when things feel like they're going to break, when you feel like you may be pushing the staff that you have too hard. But then it's the other way as well. You might feel that you have too much staff for the amount of flow that's coming in. So actually you need to make a few people redundant. But generally, when you feel that you are missing out, as the owner operator, that you're missing out on things and you're not actually getting to important strategic decisions, that's when you need to have somebody underneath you, whereas your operations manager or supervisor or somebody who can be based more in the yard, who makes sure that the team is actually doing what they need to and in the right places and with the right material.
Yeah, because I can guess it's quite easy to say, what we did buy what? How come we did what? So, and what is going on? Where is this project? What is going on here? So
you pack the wrong material in a container, and it
right.
arrives in India, and you think you've done so well, and it gets in, and the guy says, well, there's a whole forklift that somebody left inside.
yeah, exactly.
Go look on my LinkedIn, you'll see literally there's a picture of somebody receiving a container and it had a forklift inside it.
I'm not surprised at all. That stuff like that.
It's wild.
But cool. So okay. So that's why I think recycling is a very tough business, because there's two parts to it. There's a trading part, which is you need to manage your stock. As a trading house, I mean, to know where the price is going on, price is going down, you need to hedge and so on, which is not easy, it's a job. And then there's all the operational part, which is also very complex. So this is why I think it's a very, very tough business. But I think if you can manage,
Damien.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, we broke up a little bit.
Yes.
But Damien, the other thing is actually also knowing your quality. So it's not as simple as that. You actually have to know your metal, because if I sell to you a specification, and the only way you can know that spec is actually if you see the material and worked with it. So there's another whole angle that if you can't run those businesses unless you have worked with it with your hands and learned those grades.
Yes, because we had that in my soul scrapyard in the DRC. There's like stainless steel, like 314, 316,
304.
Yeah, so, and I was like, yeah, which type is it? And guys, I don't know. It's like, how come you don't know? You're the guy there. You're like, I don't know. How do we know? So, we need to ask someone else. It's like, okay.
No wonder somebody's paying you a high price, because he's selling it as 304 and they're actually getting full of 316. Definitely, that's why you're trucking it to South Africa.
But exactly. But I've seen a lot of people made quite a good fortune running well small scrapyard. They started small and then they extend. And I think I can count on one hand the amount of people that became millionaires doing that, really starting from the bottom. And
put a B before that.
Yeah. Maybe
billionaires.
I don't know them, but I know
I can name you, which I won't, at least 5 to 10 billionaires that started in the metal recycling game.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised at all, because, as I said, it requires a lot of skills. But once you own them, then you can replicate them again and again and again. So this is quite interesting. So, and Sue, I know that you have our hard stop. You told me so.
No, I can go another 10 if you want.
Okay. So let's do that. So you grew your company in New Zealand, and then you exited it recently. So
yes.
How did that happen? You sold it, closed it? How?
It wasn't a fantastic ending. We had a fallout with our financier that we had brought in from another country. And unfortunately, there was a clause in one of the contract which allowed them to take the company from us. Whether it was a mistake or not, I just didn't feel that they would ever do that. I knew about the clause. I didn't think they would do that because I was the person, my wife and I ran the company. So they actually came and executed that thinking that they had a sale. So a little bit of greed on their part. They thought they had a sale and they could make a lot of money off it. But unfortunately for them, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, their sale fell through. So they still are now, after taking it from us, they are the owners of the company in New Zealand, and they run it from where they're based. And so they're stuck with it now, and it'll be difficult to run without anybody with metal recycling experience, but that's their problem. Because for us, we moved on to something much more exciting. Yeah, it might have taken a few months to kind of deal with the fact that somebody had taken the company from us after what we had built, which was really exciting. But what we're on to now, we wouldn't take that company back if you gave it to us, because we're in a much better place right now.
But can you speak about your new project, or you want to hold off?
My new project, absolutely I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what happened was the last 3 or 4 years, my wife has spent the last 3 or 4 years bugging me about the amount of time I spend on WhatsApp. And that's purely because, when the company of the size that we were in New Zealand, I was selling about 3 to 5 commodities every single day. But with the time zones and how it works, you want to make sure that you're making it a bit of an auction. So you're offering it to probably 4 or 5 people every single commodity. When you're selling 5 commodities and you're offering it to 5 people, you're having 25 WhatsApp conversations at night usually, because in the day as an owner operator, you are absolutely stuck in the yard, as we spoke about all the other things that we're doing, which means I'm caught at the dinner table trading, right, with my young kids. I'm at their sports games trading. I'm putting them to bed, reading them a story, and everything is on WhatsApp. So my wife, who was a management consultant, said there has to be a better way. And she was at the time studying for her master's in technological futures. And she was saying there's got to be a better way than the industry trading $300 billion a year on WhatsApp. So when we exited our company, we thought, well, what a fantastic opportunity now to go and build that. So we've taken my industry knowledge and my relationships, and Lisa, who's my wife and business partner, Lisa's experience with venture creation. She was at Deloitte, as I mentioned, and was in a core team that built a digital bank in South Africa. And we're taking that combination. We've got a venture studio that's building the actual product for us, the same studio that built Afterpay, the same agency that built Afterpay. So we're really excited about that. But the whole idea is that it's relationship led, so I've got a podcast as well, which I started about the same time. It was an opportunity for me to keep relevant and keep talking to all the people in the industry and all my friends that I've dealt with for so long. And if you see it, it's Born Scrappy. And maybe you can put a link to that as well.
Yeah, I will, no problem.
But yeah, thank you, mate. And there we talk about metal recycling and trading and commodity trading, and I speak to the biggest traders around the world about that. And the idea was that I would be doing that at the same time as building this other product. And everything that comes out of that podcast was market validation, I guess, over a period, because we started to realize that marketplaces don't work, and transactional marketplaces have never worked in this industry, and they're going to be difficult to actually make right or to make them work. So we actually lead with the relationship, which sounds crazy in a marketplace because we're talking about technology, but we lead with the relationship. So we introduce parties on the platform, which people will think is very risky because people can take it off platform. But the idea is that we add so much value. This is post-trade and even just the efficiencies during the trade, that we believe people will want to stay on platform. It's a closed ecosystem, so made up of no bad actors, and every single person, buyer and seller, is personally vetted by me, which means I've got a lot of time on airplanes over the next few years, making sure that I vet every single person. But the key to this platform is going to be having good actors and no bad actors, having reputable companies that honor their contract, that supply the right quality, that pay the full amount, etc., etc. So that's been my focus for the last year.
Okay, so I mean, I have like 1,000 questions about this new opportunity. But I think as you are still building, when you will launch it, please come back on the channel, and
I'd love to.
I'll grill you. I have so many things.
I loved it. I want you to grill me as hard as you can on why it won't work. I like to think I've had all the questions already, and I've converted a lot of the people. But man, if I can convert you, that'll be fantastic.
So no matter. Let's okay. So any last word that you want to say to your audience? So you already spoken about your podcast. Your podcast is Born Scrappy. I will put a link below. There is I think your YouTube channel where you can watch it. Or there is also on the any podcast app. Any other things that you want to say?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this, Damien. It's really nice speaking to a like-minded person. There was a lot of things I said which you got straight away, and we were on the same page. It was absolutely fantastic. I look forward to coming on again and being challenged on the marketplace. I think we could have a whole episode on marketplaces and how they've done previously. And
yes, I'll do my homework, and I'll come up with a bunch of marketplaces that done extremely bad, or actually that turn into a commodity trading company, because this is the two exits.
Which is what usually happens.
Yeah,
but yeah. I'll leave you with this though. I'll leave you with this before we go into that one day. Is, do you believe that the industry, the metal industry, will continue to trade billions or trillions, if you take the whole metal industry, of these dollars and of these commodities on WhatsApp in the next 10 years?
Yes. I do
believe. Think it will continue? Okay, well, I look forward to this meeting. With all of AI, with everything happening.
Yes, but no. Okay, there's going to be AI and stuff through WhatsApp. But we'll discuss that.
Awesome.
So Stu, thanks a lot again. I will put all below this video, all the link, the books that we discuss, your podcast, and so on. And man, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I always love to meet others entrepreneurs in this commodity world. So that was really a fun chat. So thanks, man.
Thanks, David. I really enjoyed it, mate. Cheers, Bye.